Dr. Renee Harrison for the presentation of Let's Go Out to Lunch, Understanding and Working Through Our Differences with Effective Communication. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Renee Harrison by typing hello, welcome, or good morning in the chat box.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to see so many of you, and it's really so wonderful that so many people are interested in communicating better, communicating more effectively. That's a skill that we can all use, and a skill we can all certainly improve upon. And so, just to give you an idea of how I came up with this, I started thinking about all of the issues that are going on, not only in our country, but in the entire world. I mean, communication problems are worldwide. We don't have the corner on that in the United States. They exist everywhere. But I am going to focus primarily on the United States just because this is where we live. And we are having our own set of issues right now. And we see this all the time. All you have to do is look at social media, look at traditional media, and you see everything that's going on and has been going on for so long, actually. And you keep wondering, when is it going to get better? And it does not seem to be getting better. And I think that very often the root of the issue is that we're having trouble communicating with each other and understanding each other. And if we would take the time to truly communicate with each other and actually listen to each other, then we certainly probably could understand each other better and get along a lot better. And it would be wonderful if we here in the United States could truly become one nation under God again, don't you think? I certainly think so. So, for this presentation, the objectives are for you at the end to be able to identify what to consider when communicating with others, explain the underlying reasons why a person can have very different worldviews, evaluate the speakers or even the writers, although we are primarily focusing on spoken communication, but this also happens in written communication. Evaluate the speaker's words before reacting, and use more careful, effective words when attempting to communicate with others. So, one thing that I want you to consider, what differences do we see in our communities or in the media that surely seem to be affecting divisiveness in the United States? And how can we find ways to see eye to eye? So kind of think about that for a moment and tell me what you think. We, of course, do see differences in our opinions, our worldviews. Okay. Do see, yes, equal access to health care has been an issue. Yes, thank you, Christine. Let's see, James says divisiveness sells and anger feels good. Well, this is true for so many of us. You're absolutely right. But interacting one-on-one quickly dispels that divisiveness, yes. Carolina, racism seems to be a dividing factor. Absolutely, it does. And Mariah, classism is a definite um, issue. And Jesse, economic class. Okay, everyone has mentioned things that certainly are very true. Frank is saying that the media is more fragmented and targeted because of technology. Modern technology certainly has contributed to this. Uh, it seems that sometimes when we think back, for those of us who remember the days before we had social media and even the days before we had the internet and emails, it seemed that we were in a way kind of forced, to truly speak to each other more face to face. Of course, there were letters as well, letters and postcards and so on. But we also had to listen to each other more. at that time, rather than just spotting out a lot of, in some cases, anger, in some cases, untruths, and just so many different things that sometimes are met with negative responses, and then it just goes on between this response and that response, and they get more heated, and unfortunately very often more negative. So the media absolutely has a lot to do with it. Okay. Azar, you're right, we do all have a biased brain. Yes, this is true, we're all biased in so many ways. Okay. And thank you, Mariah. Yes, it's much easier for people to shoot off that message very quickly without even thinking about possible ramifications of it. We all do that. Yeah, this social media is so easy, you know? And so, and we do judge very quickly. Yes, we certainly do, Azar. Thank you. So thank you for all of you who contributed your thoughts and to that, because you all made excellent points, and I agree with every last one of you. Okay, so let's look at this. Differences that possibly are affecting the worldviews that we each have. We all have a worldview, and they've been shaped by different situations in our lives, throughout our whole lives. For example, they're shaped by our culture or co-culture. They're shaped by our society, by our race, ethnicity, nationality. Also, they're shaped by our socioeconomic status. People of different socioeconomic status very often do have different worldviews, okay? Which makes sense, because it's like your reality in that respect is a little different perhaps from my reality, from someone else's reality. And that's not only for socioeconomic status, that's for all of these. Your disability status would have a lot to do with this, as well as your sex or gender, or your sexuality or sexual orientation. What religion are you of? What are your religious beliefs? That also has a lot to do with your worldview. Your generational identity. We know that so often millennials have a different worldview from the baby boomers, who have a different worldview from the seniors, and so on. So absolutely this happens. Regional differences, not just the different parts that we live in, the different parts of this country in which we live, but also other countries experience the same thing. There are regional differences that shape our worldviews. The occupational groups, teachers, for example, may have a very different worldview in many respects from, you know, uh, administrative assistants, from doctors and lawyers, and et cetera, et cetera. So yes, your occupation has a lot to do with it, and the families and communities in which we grew up and in which we live today also have shaped us and continue to shape us. By the way, we're still being shaped by all of these factors. So it's not something that ends once we become adults. So something that we need to consider, you know, we don't remember to choose our words carefully. We don't do that. So often we're, just as we said a couple of minutes ago, we're so busy trying to get our own thoughts and opinions out that we don't consider, okay, let me think about how I'm saying this or how I'm writing this. And we don't really consider the meanings of the words that we choose to use. What about the denotation versus the connotation of the words that we're using? With the denotation meaning, it's the literal meaning of the word, as opposed to the connotation, which is more figurative and often changes depending on context in which we're using the word. Also, how clear are we being? Or are we using words and terms that are ambiguous? They can have different meanings. So when we do that, that causes a lot of confusion and a breakdown in communication. And we need, especially in writing, when we're not with that person to explain ourselves, face to face, we need to try to be as clear as we can when we're choosing the words in communicating with people. And how credible is what we're saying, whether it's spoken or written. And also, not only should we be considering how credible what we're saying or communicating is, writing or speaking, we also need to think about, well, how credible is this person who is writing or speaking this? Do we know much about this person? Do we know anything about this person? Is this person an expert in this area? Or does this person have a lot of experience in this area? Is this person truly credible? Just because someone speaks as though they have authority, just because someone may speak loudly than other people, for example, just because someone may use a lot of fancy words, those do not necessarily mean that's a credible person. And that person has or is speaking or writing with credibility. So we need to consider that. Also, does that person use a lot of cliches? Cliches are good if we only use them, very minimally. After a while, they become very trite and tiresome. And also, it weakens our credibility if we use too many cliches. And some people use an awful lot. Consider the dialect in which the person is speaking. Do we understand that person? Are we having trouble saying them because we can't quite pick up on the dialect? Sometimes that can be a barrier to communication. And of course, defamation can be a problem. Don't defame people when we are writing or speaking. Treat people with respect. We need to remember that. And don't use loaded language. If we realize that what we're saying or what we're writing could truly inflame the recipients, the people who are listening to us or who are reading what we have written, then you're using loaded language, that can be a problem. All right. Try not to use inflammatory language, loaded language. Try to use language that will be considered respectful and where it will be received calmly and not all of a sudden, somebody is completely upset and very irate just because of something we have just said or just written. So we do have to consider these things, and so often we don't. And that causes us to have troubles with communication and causes us not to be effective listeners either. Because if someone has inflamed you, for example, with what they have said, you're not paying a whole lot of attention to them. You really are not. Okay? You are upset, and we'll kind of get to that a little later. So, separating opinion from factual claims. I don't know if you've ever heard of the term factual claims before. But a factual claim is an assertion that we actually can verify with evidence. And we can show whether or not what has just been said or has just been written is either true or false. That is a factual claim. Even if we have shown, we've looked at the evidence and the evidence shows that it is actually false, it is still considered a factual claim. Okay? And then an opinion. We all have opinions, okay? So with opinions, we're expressing our personal judgment or preference. And you can either agree with it or you can disagree with it, but you cannot say that it's true or it's false because it's an opinion. It is not a factual claim, okay? So let's look at exercise 1. I am asking you to distinguish opinions from factual claims with these statements. The first one, excuse me, the first one says, New York is a place to work than Chicago. That is a statement. a declarative statement. New York is a better place to work than Chicago. Now, tell me, is that an opinion or is that a factual claim? What do you think? Opinion, opinion, opinion. Opinion. Yes. Okay, James. Opinion, but it could be factual depending on benefits and such. Thank you, James. You have pointed out something that I'm about to point out. Yes, that is usually an opinion. No basis of facts. That's very true, but could be. Okay, Charlotte, thank you. You and James are hinting at the same thing. Um, Yes, most of us would say that this statement is an opinion. You know, your opinion is New York is better to work than Chicago. Mine is not. I may disagree with you completely. All right. However, it could possibly be a factual claim. And let me explain why. You would need more information. What do we mean by better? Okay, better in what way? So if the person were with me, especially face to face, I would ask them, well, what do you mean by better? You know, could it be better because there are more jobs available in New York than Chicago? Or is it better because the wages are higher and salaries are higher in New York than Chicago? Or is it that transportation is better and so it's easier to get back and forth to work? I mean, you know, so you have to get more information to see where that person is coming from because maybe it is a factual claim depending on what the person means. So that is a case where you really would kind of need more information. But based on just that statement alone, as it is written, yes, I would say that it is an opinion. Absolutely, Mariah. That is something that could be verified depending on more information, whatever information it is that that person gives you when you ask them to give you further information about it. So thank you. Okay, next one. Apple was founded in 1976. Is that an opinion or a factual claim? Yep. Absolutely. Thank you so much. That is a factual claim. You can look that up. You know, wouldn't be hard to find that information at all. Apple was founded in 1976 is a factual claim. The evidence is out there to be found. Okay, this one. Emotional appeals are more persuasive than logical appeals. Is that an opinion or a factual claim? Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got some differences of opinion here, which is absolutely fine. Um, and emotional appeals are more persuasive than logical appeals. I think most people, if you presented it to them just like that, would probably say it's an opinion, but it could be a factual claim if you got more evidence. And see, this is the thing. Very often we don't ask for more evidence. We don't ask for more information. And we don't bother to take the time to try to do the research and try to get more information to see, is that a factual claim or is that just somebody's opinion? You know, and how should I take that? So again, I would say it just kind of depends. As it stands, yes, it's an opinion. Absolutely, Mariah. But that could change if you get more evidence. It absolutely could. Okay. Capitalism is immoral. What do you think? Opinion or factual claim? Capitalism is immoral. hmm So everyone is agreeing with this one. Yes, capitalism is immoral. That's an opinion. That is an opinion. How are you going to find that out? You know, what evidence is there? You know, that's basically someone's opinion, all right? Because when it comes to things of morality and ethics, most of the time we're looking at people's opinions. Okay, selling pizza. This is the next one. Selling pizza has a higher profit margin than selling hamburgers. What do you think? Opinion or factual claim? Selling pizza has a higher profit margin than selling hamburgers. Okay, this is a factual claim, and the reason is because this will be relatively easy to find out, to do the research and to get the evidence that would show whether or not this is true or false. It could be false, it could be true. Either way, it's going to be a factual claim because this could be easily verified or not. In other words, you can look it up. Okay, so thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, need to see evidence. Okay. Absolutely. You need to see the evidence. And this one, companies should not do business with corrupt governments. Is that an opinion or is it a factual claim? Companies should not do business with corrupt governments. That's an opinion. Everyone seems to agree. Now, notice that just because I speak it with authority and I sound like I know what I'm talking about, that is not what makes it either an opinion or a factual claim. And I think that's something that we all should remember, just as I indicated before. Anybody can say things as though it's a fact or a factual claim. That's not what makes it so. It's whether or not you can look it up. Where's the evidence? Companies should not do business with corrupt governments. I would say for the most part, this is somebody's opinion. All right. So, because saying should and should not is, again, a judgment call. And usually judgment calls are based on someone's opinion. So I would say, yes, this is opinion. Okay. But you can always discuss the evidence. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Izar. Absolutely right. Okay. So, two principles for us to keep in mind when we're trying to determine whether or not someone is speaking as an opinion, as giving their opinion, or making a factual claim. Opinions are opinions, whether we agree with them or not. Okay, remember, everybody has an opinion about something. And just because someone has given their opinion, we don't have to agree with it. We can choose to agree or not agree. And we really should not get upset just because we've expressed an opinion and someone else disagrees with it. But the tendency so often with so many of us, so many arguments start because I've expressed an opinion, you expressed your disagreement with it, and now I'm upset. My feelings are hurt because you didn't agree. you know, that happens so often. We need to try to remember I've expressed my opinion. That person has the right to his or her opinion too. And it may or may not agree with mine. So we really should not get so upset just because we may disagree when we're giving our opinions. Secondly, factual claims are factual claims, whether they are proven true or not. It is still a factual claim. Okay, it's still a factual claim, even if it is shown to be not true. So, the next thing is we also very often do not own our thoughts and feelings, and this also causes a breakdown in communication. People get upset because it sounds like you've just accused me of something. So let's try not to use accusatory language. And this is when we come into saying, you did this rather than I did this, or I felt this way about what you did or what you said. And hence the difference between you statements and I statements. And I think you will see as we do exercise number 2, from you to I. Take a look at these statements and tell me, are these You statements, or are they I statements? If it's a you statement, it will sound very accusatory. Okay? An I statement does not sound so accusatory. So this one, you're making me angry. Is it a you statement or an I statement? Yes, yes, yes. Everyone's got you statement. Very good. And then the next one, you're not listening to me. Is that a you statement or an I statement? Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. All right, everyone's coming up with you. Very good. The next one, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. You statement, I statement. Absolutely. Okay. And then the next one, you hurt my feelings. You hurt my feelings. You statement or I statement. Yeah, it looks like a couple of you did say I. That one was a little tricky, but that's still considered a you statement, and I'm going to go back over these and explain why. Okay, you're not making any sense. What about that one? You statement, I statement. You statement. Okay. Okay, now let's go back. Now, for the most part, those were all you statements. Okay. What I'd like us to do now is to turn these you statements into I statements so that they don't seem accusatory. So, for the first one, you're making me angry. How are we going to change that? Let's make it an I statement. You can go ahead and type it in. Right. Okay, Kristen, I feel upset or angry. Christine, I feel angry. Carolina, I'm angry. Andrea, I'm feeling angry about this. Heard by what you said, absolutely. And that truly explains it even further, Shauna. Thank you. Just getting at it. Brandy, I am angry with this conversation right now. Right. I am feeling angry by what you just said, or I am getting angry in this conversation. You know, anything like that, because what have you done? You have taken ownership of your feelings. You're not blaming the other person. You're telling the other person, I'm feeling very angry by what you just said, but it's still my feelings. It's not making me feel this way. I'm just getting angry about what you feel. So you're taking ownership, and that actually calms things down rather than inflame things. If you keep telling someone, look, you're making me angry, well, that has what type of effect? It probably makes them angry or at least offended, right? But if you say, I'm getting angry, then that person is less likely to get upset by what you just said. And so look at this one, you're not listening to me. So you've accused that person of not listening. Maybe you have good reason to have said that. Maybe they have given you some nonverbal cues that's telling you they're not listening, but still you need to take ownership of this. How are you going to do this? Let's make this an I statement. I don't feel heard right now. That's right. Right. I feel you're not listening to me right now. Yep. I don't think you're listening to me. Am I right? Oh, Andrea, and the reason that all of you are right, of course, but the reason that I like Andrea's is because she also went a step further to ask verification of of the statement she just made. Because maybe that person is listening, but they're, for whatever reason, the cues are just off, or you're missing something. But you have asked for verification, and that's a good thing to do. How often do we not do that? So often we don't. So that's a good thing to do also. Let's see. I do not feel like you hear me. That's right, Christine. Thank you. Okay. The next one. You don't know what you're doing? Let's turn that to an I statement. You don't know what you're doing. So we've accused this person of not knowing what he or she is doing. Let's turn that into an I statement and take ownership of that. I don't think, let's see. I don't feel you hear me. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. I don't understand what you're doing. There we go. I am confused. Why are you doing this? Good, good. I'd like to show you how to do this. Again. Okay, Kristen, you took went a step further there. I like that. Um, Kimberly also, let me help you. Uh-huh. Let's see. I feel unsure about the steps you're taking right now. Good. I'm unclear about your approach on this. Good. Why are you doing this? Okay, good, good. Ask a question. That's good. I would like to explain this again. Can you repeat back to me what your interpretation is? Excellent, excellent. Trying to get clarification to make sure that the person understood what you were telling them. Okay. Why are you doing this? I'm not sure. Okay. Can I help you do this? Absolutely. Okay, good. I like the way you're turning these into I statements and taking ownership of your thoughts here. Instead of just accusing, you're actually seeing if you can help them, and you're trying to see if you can understand better. I like that. And you want to make sure that that person understands better too. Very good. All of those are excellent approaches. You hurt my feelings. So how are we going to turn this one around to make it an I statement? You hurt my feelings. So we've accused that person. How are we going to take that accusatory tone away and take ownership of it? I'm feeling hurt right now. Yes. My feelings are hurt. Yeah. What happened upset me. Yeah. I'm hurting right now. I'm hurting. I feel hurt. I was hurt by da 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 da. Absolutely. Whatever it was that transpired or whatever it was that was said. Yes. Absolutely. Okay, you've all got it. Excellent. Excellent. And you're not making any sense. How are we going to turn that one around? You're not making any sense. Very accusatory. Let's take ownership of it. I don't understand what you're saying. Help me understand. Yep. I'm confused. I'm a bit confused. Absolutely. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. How great. That's really great. I'm confused. Yep. Confused by this. Don't understand. Can you explain another way? Wonderful. That's a great technique to use when you're trying to get clarification, because it could be that it needs to be explained a different way to help you understand. Absolutely, that's right. I would love for your help in understanding right now. Absolutely. I love the way you said that, Brandy. That's great. Okay, so you guys did such a great job with that exercise. Wonderful. Okay, so also remember the difference between powerful versus powerless language, okay? Because again, we are still on this theme of chosen words can help us understand each other better. So, if we use powerful speech, then we are going to appear more active and assertive, right? So, powerful speech is usually used by persons of higher status or higher authority or with expertise or any combination of those three. And powerful language can take the forms of interruptions. You're interrupting people when they speak, or directions, so you're giving others directions, or of course, opinions. You don't mind giving other people your opinions. All those are considered powerful speech. Now let's look at powerless speech. Powerless speech is more passive and timid. That's how they appear, okay, when we use powerless words. Very often used by persons of a lower status in some way, such as no authority or very little authority, or someone who does not have any expertise in the area or doesn't have any experience in whatever it is that they're talking about. All right? And those persons very often will use disclaimers, hedges, tag questions, hesitations, intensive and formal address terms. So very often they will say something like, well, I don't really know, but and they'll go ahead and say what it is. And or very often they'll make a statement and then they'll say, don't you think? Or okay. Or, be as though to ask the person that they're speaking to confirm that what they said is right, or to confirm that they had a right to say what they just said. So all of those are used in a way that really does make you appear to be more timid and more passive, and in a sense, to make you seem like you don't know what you're talking about. Whereas the person who uses powerful speech does appear to be an authority, does appear to know what he or she is talking about. So very often, just the words that we use, what we say and how we say them, can make us appear to be more or less authoritative, more or less powerful. And Shauna, yes, I just all the time. Yeah. You know what, Shauna? I get that. I get that. I sometimes have caught myself doing that also. And unfortunately, that is powerless speech. And so sometimes I have to kind of remind myself, nope, no, 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 don't do that. Don't do that, because you are supposed to be speaking with power and authority. And when you say things like, well, or I only wanted to know, or I was just thinking, you're you're hedging, and it's like you're using that disclaimer first. And then, no, don't do that. Don't tag what you say. Just say what you have to say and be done with it. And that is powerful speech. Yes, we are socialized to do this. Women especially are socialized to do this, unfortunately. Um, you know, we grow up hearing that from childhood. The other women in our lives, we hear them do that, and that becomes a part of us, and we start doing that too. Or very often, perhaps the men in our lives didn't pay a whole lot of attention to what we were saying, and we started being more temperate in our language and, in a sense, asking permission to say what we wanted to say. And so we'll say, well, do you think maybe, then we say whatever it is. We need to get out of that. And we need not to teach other women, girls to do that. Let's not teach them to do that. Let's teach them to be more powerful in their speech, to exude confidence, not a lack of confidence. That's what we need to do. Okay? Absolutely. I'm sorry, but yes. Yes, that's one of those as well. I'm sorry, but no, don't use the hesitations, the disclaimers, the intensity, all of that. All of this is, we're all using these examples because we've all done this. We've all done this. So we just need to be more aware of what we say when we're saying it, or what we're about to say before we say it, so that we can stop this pattern that has become so much a part of us, especially of women. Okay. Carefully chosen words can certainly help us still understand each other better. So that powerless speech, we just use examples of all of this. Okay, so we're going to move to the next slide. And the HURIER model discusses 6 stages of effective listening. And HURIER is actually an acronym. Okay, so the H is hearing, then the U, understanding. The first R, remembering. The I is interpreting. The E is evaluating, and then the last R is for responding. So these are the stages of effective listening. And we all need to remember that this is what we do if we're listening effectively. First, we hear what has been spoken. We're attempting, we're processing it and attempting to understand it. Then we remember it. And then we're going to interpret it for ourselves. Okay, so what does it mean to us? And we're evaluating it. How can we use this? How can we use this in our own lives, right? For ourselves. And then we decide, am I going to respond? Normally we do. And we decide how we're going to respond to it, whatever it is that was communicated. Okay, that is the HURIER model of effective listening. There are 7 types of listening responses, and you know what? This ties in to the exercise that you were sent, and you were asked to please go ahead and place those 7 types of listening responses in order. Now, the order is the most passive response needs to be at the top. And then the further down you go, the response, the listening response should become more active. And the most active response should be at the very bottom of your list. And you are about to be broken up into rooms of 3 or 4 people, and you are going to take about 10 minutes to discuss this and as a group come up with your list. And you're going to determine as a group what's the most passive listening response, again, at the top, and then what's the most active listening response at the bottom. And again, the further down you go, the more active that response becomes, right? Put them in order. Hopefully you enjoyed that exercise. And does anyone want to share how they, in their group, listed those terms?
Okay.
Hi,
And
Brandy.
so, hi, our group was great. So I'll tell them to you in order from like least most passive to most active. So we started off with
Yes.
stonewalling, and then we went to back channeling, then paraphrasing. Fourth, we have supporting. Then we have empathizing, analyzing, and we ended in advising.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much for sharing that, Brandy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. You're
Hi, this
welcome.
is Kimberly. I was in a group with a
Kimberly.
team that had very similar outcome. We did have a slight
Okay.
between the empathy and the support. As we discussed
Okay.
it, we felt there were a variety of ways that you could interpret it to be somewhat active, but then also passive. So we had it aligned out, and then at the end, one of the members brought a great point about how analyzing and advice was the most active means of communicating. So we made a flip right at the end, but otherwise exactly the same except for empathy and support.
Okay. So what was the thinking in your group as to why analyzing and advising were the most active?
It was more the
Okay.
thought that you had to have listened through the process in order for you to effectively analyze and provide guidance. We had a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
discussion about the supporting element being what if you don't agree with the speaker's opinion? Then
Uh-huh.
how could you fully support? So we didn't feel that would be the most beneficial. And that's why
All
we
right.
the flip at the end, because initially we had support as the most active listening response. And then after we dialogued a little bit about that, we felt that perhaps there was an adjustment that we needed to make. But again,
Uh-huh.
it went back and forth on a lot of these.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, it's good that that your groups did go back and forth, I can imagine others did as well. So let me tell you the order. And yes, it's good that you made that switch. Okay. So in order from most passive to most active, stonewalling is the most passive. Okay. Because you're not saying anything. You're not saying anything. You're not doing anything. You're just sitting there with your arms crossed, and nobody can tell what your thoughts are because you're not speaking. You're just not sharing. You're not doing anything. Back channeling is next, then paraphrasing, then empathizing, then supporting. And you see, supporting is the third from the top, from the most active, right? Then analyzing and advising is the most active because you are taking action when you advise, because you are actually going to somebody else and you are advising them. That's the most action on this whole group, this whole list. Okay, so those of you who did this in this order: stonewalling, back channeling, paraphrasing, empathizing, supporting, analyzing, and advising, you got it right. Congratulations. I have a feeling that all of you did such a great job with this exercise. And for the two groups that did share um, your list with us, thank you so much for doing that. Okay, so let's talk about barriers to effective listening and how in the world can we overcome them. And actually, we already have talked about barriers, but how do we also overcome these barriers? So there are about 8 barriers to effective listening. Let's talk about these, and these are not in any particular order here, by the way, just to let you know. Um, so noise is the first one that we come upon. And when we think about noise, well, just remember, noise could be physical, some sort of physical distraction, but it also could be a psychological distraction. Aha. How often do we think about that, huh? So tell me, what examples can you think of that would be physical versus psychological distractions? Anybody want to share? Want to type it in? What do you think? What's an example of a physical distraction, and what's an example of a psychological distraction that could interfere with effective listening? Let's see, Mariah, if someone has a lot of things on their mind at once, they're probably not really engaged in the conversation. That's right. So that's a psychological barrier. Shauna can't listen to you're right, the point of view of another political party. That is psychological. You're absolutely right. And we're going to talk about that too. Um, Christine, phones. If someone's getting alerts on their phone while talking, yep, definitely. And that is usually considered a physical distraction, although it could be psychological too. And the reason I say that is because you've been interrupted by the alert or the phone ringing or whatever, but also maybe you're trying to speak or you're trying to listen, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I wonder who that was, or I think I know who that was. Let me finish with this conversation really quickly because I got to get to that person. I got to call that person back. So you're not really paying attention. So that actually, a phone could actually be both a physical distraction and a psychological distraction. Okay. Pondering on issues, psychological, absolutely. Construction noises outside, yes, that happens so often. How many times, for example, have you been in a class, perhaps even trying to take a test, and somebody outside is hammering away, drilling away, they've got the blower going, blowing around leaves or whatever, and that noise is filtering in and interfering with you while you're trying to concentrate? That certainly is an issue for all of us. That brand, a boring class and a Wi-Fi connection. Those are definite distractions. So yeah, you're all coming up with great examples. A child talking in the background, which could be both physical and psychological. And yeah, certainly can be very, very, very bad. So thank you so much. Yeah, you've come up with great examples. Wonderful. So yes, noise can certainly be a barrier to effective listening, whether you're talking about physical or psychological distractions or noise. Pseudo listening. What's pseudo listening? Well, pseudo listening is when you are pretending to listen. Remember, pseudo means false, so it's not real, it's false. And pseudo listening, false listening. You look like you're listening, you're giving the physical cues that you're listening, but you know in your mind you're really not listening. And so many of us actually got good at this when we took class, when we were in class. I would say especially like in high school, how many times did we do this? But anyway, you're pretending to listen, you're not really listening. That's pseudo listening. Selective attention. What is selective attention? Any ideas? Anybody want to guess?
What about if it's interesting, like listening, but really only the parts that interest you? Like the parts that you think are interesting, that's when you tune in. Other than that, you kind of tune back out.
Absolutely, that's right. Yes. So you're listening only to what you want to hear, only to what you agree with. And how often do we do this? We tune out what we don't agree with. It's like, especially when we think about politics, for example, that's a real great example, in fact. If they're not saying something that we want to hear, if they are of the opposite opinion, for example, then very often we're not too interested in what they have to say. And really, we should be listening just for the sake of being able to understand their point of view better, their worldview better. But we don't do that so often. Very often we're like, nope, not interested. Not gonna listen. La 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 la. Yeah, we do these kinds of things because we don't want to listen to somebody else's opinion if it doesn't match my opinion. Yeah, so that is selective attention. Information overload. We have this so often these days. Information overload. There's so much information available to us, so much information out there, and we feel overwhelmed because it's like it's all coming at us. Information and the media are dynamic. They're everywhere, 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 and just it feels like it's all coming at us. Okay, so the information overload, just by the fact that we are feeling overwhelmed because there's so much of it, actually is a barrier to effective listening, because when we feel overwhelmed, we kind of shut down. All right, and that includes our listening. We shut down. So that's a barrier to effective listening. Glazing over. A lot of times we do this, and so often, in class is boring or something, and we just start daydreaming. And basically that's what glazing over is. We're daydreaming, instead of actually listening to what someone is saying, to what's going on. And do you realize that as humans, most of us can understand about 600 words per minute when spoken to us, right? Most of us have the capability of understanding about 600 words per minute. However, most of us, the average person, can only speak about 150 words per minute. And so some of you are probably saying, oh, I know people who can speak a lot faster than that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the average person can speak only about 150 words per minute. So what does that tell you? We can listen a lot faster than someone else can speak to us. That gives us time to just kind of drift off because that person's not speaking as fast as we can listen, and we stop listening after a while. So that is a barrier to effective listening, that glazing over. We start daydreaming because it's taken too long for what that person is saying to be said. Okay? And rebuttal tendency. All right. Um, when we rebut, basically, this basically means that we have a tendency, some of us, to start formulating what we want to say before that person finishes saying. And especially if we disagree with what they're saying, because we're already thinking, oh, no, 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 that doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't agree with that. And you're arguing with that person in your mind before you even open your mouth and before they finish talking. You're debating with that person, and then you're thinking, okay, well, then when this person shuts up, I am going to say this. This is what I want to say. And you just, you stop listening because you're arguing with the person in your mind, and you're saying, this is what I'm going to say. Just waiting for them to shut up, really. You're not listening anymore. You just want them to be quiet so that you can go ahead and start talking. That is rebuttal tendency, and so many of us are guilty of doing that. Okay. Okay, closed-mindedness. Yes, yes. A lot of people do refuse to listen to ideas and opinions that are different from our own. So we don't necessarily jump in and want to shut that other person up, and we want to argue with them, while they're speaking. We may do that. So we may be closed-minded, but also be rebutting them while they're talking. But the idea of closed-mindedness is that we simply will not listen to any ideas or opinions that are different from our own. That's it. We don't care. We just won't listen. Competitive interrupting. Have you been in conversations with people who keep interrupting you, and they won't let you finish what you have to say, and they won't let you make your point? That is actually a technique that people use who like to get power, get control of the conversation. So it's a power grab. That's exactly what it is. It is a power grab. All right. They're basically saying, look, what you have to say is not important to me. What I have to say is important. And so I'm just going to keep interrupting you, because I want you to know that I'm in control of this conversation. That's what that person is saying who uses competitive interruption. And yes, it is very annoying. And I think we all know people like that. Family, friends, colleagues, co-workers, whatever, bosses. I mean, we all know people like that. And it can really be so aggravating. But it's a power grab. They want you to know that they're more important and they're more powerful. But it's an effective listening barrier. And what we should do is not interrupt each other. We should try to listen to each other so that we can truly communicate and understand each other, and hopefully not be offended and not argue so much. Okay? So in conclusion, here are some tips for becoming an effective listener. Separate what is and isn't said, or what was and wasn't said. And I say that because very often we think we heard what we really did not hear. And we have kind of interjected our own interpretation, thinking that the person really said this, and they really didn't say that at all. So let's try not to do that. Let's actually listen to them. And if we're not sure, if we think we heard something, ask for clarification, make exercises. Ask them, is that really what you said? Is that really what you meant? This is what I think I heard. Can you tell me if I'm right or not? Okay. Also, avoid the confirmation bias, all right? And what we mean is that the confirmation bias is a tendency to pay attention only to information that supports our own values and our own beliefs. And if it doesn't, then we just throw it out. You know, we're like, nope, nope, not valued. And so we just kind of throw it in the trash. It's sort of like the trash can of our memories. We just get rid of it. Don't do that. Just because someone disagrees with you or is of a different opinion or belief, that doesn't mean that what they have to say is not valuable. Okay? Listen for substance more than style. Again, listen to what they truly are saying rather than how they're saying it. You got a lot of people who are charismatic, who are wonderful speakers. That doesn't mean that what they have to say is substantive. So listen for the substance of what they're saying. And this especially happens in politics, all right? Listen for what they're actually saying, the substance, rather than the style that they're using. Be a skeptic. You know, just try to kind of investigate what you think you heard or what was written and try to verify it. Be skeptical about the things that people say or write, all right? Evaluate speaker's credibility. Again, is this a credible person? And therefore, should I really pay close attention to what they're saying? And should I believe it or not? Is it a factual claim or an opinion? Understand probability, because there's always a good chance of probability versus possibility. And remember, if it's 50%, if there's 50% likelihood that something is true, that's probability. Okay, remember that. That's probability. Listen non-judgmentally. Try not to judge when you're listening to people, okay? And acknowledge feelings. Acknowledge your feelings. Acknowledge their feelings also. We all have feelings, and we want those feelings to be acknowledged, all right? It's very important to acknowledge everyone's feelings. And communicate your support non-verbally as well as verbally. Important. Please communicate that you support this person. And non-verbally, how would you do that? By maintaining eye contact with the person, by appearing to be listening to them and truly listening to them, truly listening to them. By smiling at them, when they're speaking and when you meet them and so on. And if you're in a face-to-face situation, one day we'll all be there again. Maybe even a touch on the arm or on the shoulder to reassure them and let them know that, yes, you hear them and you understand. And you even empathize if they have told you about their feelings, okay? Everyone wants empathy at some point in their lifetime, right? Okay. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I appreciate everybody. Okay, so let's try it. You're ready to start communicating more effectively. I want you to keep in mind, who would you like to invite to join you for lunch and some serious open conversation on a topic about which you feel strongly? Think about someone you'd like to invite and you'd like to have that serious open conversation with. How will you do your part to ensure that the conversation will be mutually civil, beneficial, and enlightening? Think about all that, okay? Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this presentation. Have a fantastic